project was proposed conditioned upon the acquisition of an easement so that in the future we would be able to continue to operate and maintain the pipe within the easement, much like we do the one further to the south where the existing 18-inch pipe is. When the property owner actually asked us to stop moving forward with that project so that we could review the easement terms, and we were stalled at the point of negotiations. Just as a reminder, if you should so decide, there is a contemplated closed session item later to discuss the compensation for that easement. But at both the Common Council and the property owner's request, we sought a drainage alternative. In fairness to both the council and as all of the residents were told at the neighborhood meeting, this is obviously the first that you've seen the comparison. So it wasn't that there was a decision already that the alternative was cheaper or better or a more effective treatment. In fact, staff is also continuing to recommend to continue to keep the drainage as it otherwise flows today through the pipe through the backyard at 9731. But in this item in particular, we wanted to be able to present to you what the two alternatives were, the logistics. Please recall that while there is the failed drainage pipe itself, there is also a failed pipe within the easement that needs to be addressed. Depending on which alternative is selected, depends on what the options are to address that pipe. There is the option to line it if it can otherwise remain the 18-inch pipe as it is now. But if we were to add the additional drainage, that pipe would need to be replaced. So unfortunately, it's not as simple as just dealing with the sinkhole, as there are other drainage facilities that need to be addressed at the same time. So the purpose of tonight's discussion was to present to you both of those two alternatives and see if there was consensus or direction on one of the two alternatives. And then again, should you decide to contemplate negotiations, that's available through a closed session at the Common Council meeting.
Thank you. I think it's important to point out we did offer to pay for the easement.
Correct.
But we couldn't agree to a price, and the price that was countered by the property owner was much higher than we paid for similar easements in the same area back when we did the East Trunk Sewer project, by quite a bit. That's why we've stalemated over the past few months.
Correct, and in that location, there wasn't a pipe that was existing. We purchased the easements to place a pipe where there was not previously a pipe. In this case, there is a pipe. We're just trying to get
4-foot diameter sewer pipe.
Correct. In this case, we're just trying to get the easement to memorialize the ability to operate and maintain that pipe.
So there's the rest of the background. It's not that we didn't offer to pay for it. We couldn't agree on a price. And to the comment made earlier by Mr. Bartlett, there is some concern about setting a precedent, because every time you go to seek another easement, someone, well, they caved on this one, and we can just stall and get more money. So that is a concern. But I do acknowledge it is cheaper to do it. The preferred route is through the backyard of the affected property. That's where the sinkhole is. That's where the pipe is. And it is cheaper, whether we pay the original amount or the proposed. I guess, what is the amount the property owner is proposing? Is it
$29,000 was the
but
property.
The appraisal valued it at 22.
Correct, and unfortunately didn't account for the fact that there is a pipe that was existing. So typically we would have gone back to otherwise reevaluate the appraisal, but the determination was to ultimately see what the alternative was and whether it was a comparable cost, since we already had the legal right and access. Obviously, we have since determined that it would be more expensive.
So we can debate it here, or we can choose to formulate our strategy in closed session later. Maybe I'll just ask for a straw poll what this body's preference is. Would we like to try and do it now, or take advantage of our closed session later to formulate the strategy to move forward? Show of hands for closed session later. Okay, I see. And who would like to take this matter up now? Got 2 versus more than 2.
And maybe we could certainly answer questions in open
Please
session. It would
get
just
questions
be
out now, but I don't know if it'll be a little clunky to get through this in this forum, but please get all your questions from staff now, if there are any. I'm well versed. I won't ask any questions. Alderman Mayor.
Correct me if I'm wrong. One of the reasons why the state that wants to go with 29,000 is they're going to eliminate landscaping, the landscaping costs inside there.
So our offer was for compensation for the easement and installation of compensatory landscaping. If we ultimately went to pay for the easement, then we wouldn't install compensatory landscaping. So the city had worked with the forester to otherwise evaluate the trees that would be impacted by the project. And obviously, we can't feasibly install them at the size that they are. But we did offer compensatory landscaping, as we also would consider if we went with the drainage alternative.
So he would not, or whatever entity would not be required then to re-landscape that area, his property?
If and the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we paid for the easement based on the impact to the property value, it would just be a check cut, and no, he would not be required to, or they, would not be required to use that for landscaping. That would just be compensation for the impact to the property based on the project. What we were originally offering was both compensation for the easement and compensatory landscaping to address some of what would be damaged through the project.
So my question was actually to the fact of that. Second question was to the fact that then that property doesn't get rehabilitated, or is it?
If we compensated for the easement, we would just replace the pipe.
After you fill it in, that's just the way it is? It just sits there on the person's property, or what?
Well, if we compensated for the easement, we would still, as is up for discussion, we could still replace the pipe, compensate for the easement. We just wouldn't perform the compensatory landscaping. And whether the property owner used that money for compensatory landscaping or for a cruise, at that point would be up to the property owner to decide.
Right?
Correct.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, perhaps we should move on and take up the formulation of a strategy.
I'll change my vote to closed session.
Okay. So we'll be taking this matter up later in Common Council at the end in the closed session, and you'll hear from the outcome of that tomorrow morning, I would imagine, at some point. So going once and twice on any more comments, questions for staff, otherwise we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, we're on to the next item. That is, get back to the top here. Town Center Tax Increment District Number 3, final design of streetscape elements. Director Tollefson's going to take us through some decisions we have to make.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Council. Nice to see everyone. Hopefully this is kind of a fun exercise to go through. We wanted to update you on some design choices, or perhaps in some cases the lack of choices that we perhaps have, but we want to make everybody aware of what the end result may be out in the street so that no one is surprised by anything. There's nothing in here that where we do have design choices, that you can't comment on in terms of, changing up a certain color of landscaping or a certain material. So if there's any suggestions that you want us to continue to explore, we're happy to do that. We are getting close to, I would say, 75% plan set. So the timing to bring this to you is kind of critical now, so that if there were to be any significant changes, we've got some time to work through those. So maybe if the mayor's okay with this, I will try to group some of the elements together and just give you a quick overview of those, and then you guys can talk collectively about all of those items, and then we'll move on to kind of the next set of features. This is just the laundry list for the packet that I wanted to talk through. As part of our workshop last year, the council, there was consensus to replace the cemetery lighting that was removed at the time that we extended the public water main back in 2009. The TIF made that expenditure for the water main. There will be a fence along with new street trees, street fixtures along that street edge, and certainly that'll help delineate, that portion of the block that doesn't otherwise have buildings on it. But as part of the workshop, I think there was consensus in the aspect that for those visiting and in the cemetery, it would be really nice to have that barrier and that buffer again of a fence. There was, I think, some suggestion at that meeting that we do something a little bit different than our existing town center fence, that we use maybe an ornamental version of that. I did reach out to multiple people on the Historical Society, the library, to try to find an image of a fence in Mequon. It's not reading great on here, but the left picture is actually Freistadt, and it's across the street from where the hardware store is. So it's by Trinity. So there's a little fence there on the corner. This is back in the late 1800s. It was a wood fence. On the right, I think, is an example of kind of that vintage ornamental fence that you would typically see back in that time, that at cemeteries. So we worked with a fence company to look at the option of what an ornamental fence would look like that would still be somewhat consistent with our existing fence. I just provided, just in case, sometimes these are hard things to look at or point out when you're driving or walking through or to recognize, but there is implementation of that fence both in Mequon and in Thiensville. Along similar lines, walls and railings, we have a very large and long retaining wall along Mequon Road on the north side, obviously adjacent to Spur 16, with all of the other infrastructure and greening that we plan to do on this corridor. We don't want this to look left over and dated. And then in addition to those, we've got two walls on the left-hand side that are over by the Rotary Riverwalk across from Division Street and the library. It's the photo on the left that has a wall with actually green painted railing. So the image on the right is what Thiensville has used at their bridge over by Skippy's and right along the river. And then this is the option that we can do with those fence. We can put a thin stone veneer on it that replicates what we've used throughout Town Center, and then use a new railing. We may have to just paint the existing railing black. It's heavily bolted, and it may be difficult to remove those bolts, fill those large openings actually in the wall, and then replace it. But we do show an option here potentially of a concrete cap, and so that might provide us some additional flexibility. So those are really just kind of the walls and fencing. So if the council would like to comment on that.
Are there any comments on the fence? Are you just picking between option A and option B?
Yes, I mean, if someone has some other idea and there's consensus on it and everybody agrees that we should explore that, I'm happy to do that.
Let's keep it simple.
Yeah, well, we can keep it simple. we reserve that right to do that once in a while.
Two options, right?
I vote for A.
I vote for B.
Of course you do.
Okay, straw poll. Who likes? So A is used in other places currently. I guess is B. Well, it's a good question. Is it significantly different in cost, which it doesn't look like?
No, it's not significantly distinct in cost.
Do we just do it by the cemetery, or
we would only do the ornamental one along the cemetery. The rest we would implement in the existing town center fence. The cost, so the street frontage along the cemetery is just under 300 linear feet. Really, the cost difference comes between whether we want to use aluminum or steel. The fencing company recommends steel just because of all of the lawn equipment. So this is in the price range of somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000, to just give you a little ballpark for the entire linear frontage. The steel is more expensive.
So am I correct in saying that we'd have more consistency throughout everything if we went with A, but B is a little more ornamental for the cemetery?
Correct.
Okay. Who likes option A? Yep, show of hands. Let's go option A, because I'm practical. Option B, I suppose everyone else is going to vote for B. Okay, so flexible.
I just think the cemetery should be delineated in some way.
And that's fine.
And I think this gives a more historic look to it, and it's a historic cemetery, so it just keeps the traditional look.
Fair point. Alderman Strelchak first.
I agree with Alderman Schneider. I also would just highlight the fact that they're so similar in design that they really do tie in with each other. It's just one little slight ornamental feature on the one versus the other. I didn't like option B because I felt it looked kind of sharp, but it's also kind of on the edge of a cemetery. And if it discourages one person from climbing it, not a bad idea.
Alderman Meyer.
My only concern with B is the fact that we do have people that put their kids on top, holding on to them and stuff, and then pulling them off and having that. I don't know what the distance is between the arrow on the top and that is from that to, but that is a little concern.
Should they be doing that at the cemetery?
Well, just getting caught on it coming off.
It's better than the old one on the right. Where
well,
you're going to get skewered.
That'd be worse. But,
So this fence is in the 4 to 4.5 foot range.
Looks like we've got a consensus for incorporating something resembling option B around the cemetery. That's okay. So we made a decision.
Right.
On to the next one.
So we debated a couple different options for this. We talked about even looking at installing maybe some planters on the top of the concrete cap for some like landscaping and vines that could come down it. That can always be added if we choose not to do the guardrail. We do have obviously some height and some limitations in terms of spacing with the guardrail, just from a safety standpoint of falling off the other end. That made the planters a little bit more complicated. And if Kristen's still in the room, she wasn't super enthusiastic about more maintenance and day to day. We kind of joked in our office that each one of us planners would take care of the planters. Each take a week in the summer and take care of them, but
with a contest at the end.
Right. No, so we're looking to add that stone veneer. If there was to be prioritization of where you would add the stone veneer, I would definitely choose this and the bridge location over the one at Division Street. But there is Thiensville entryway with some stone right at Division Street as well that matches this look.
I think the stone looks sharp. I'm not sure what everyone's opinion is.
I like
it. Really dresses it up.
I like it too, and that area currently is so singularly unattractive that it would really make a big difference there.
You said that you would put lights on that, or no?
We were talking about doing that at the bridge, but I do think that's an option here.
Because I think that would make it more attractive. Let's see. If lights would work.
I think people might have a little trouble hearing. I can hear you.
I'm sorry. I thought that adding lights there would highlight that area.
Is there a feeling on the planters Kim mentioned? I think they look nice, but I think they could end up being a little bit of a maintenance hassle.
I think that you're right. I think it might be a maintenance struggle, and an unkempt flower area is worse than none.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Does everyone sort of agree with that? Alderman Parrish?
I agree with the planners. Depending on cost, I think Alderman Andrews' ideas would be interesting to see.
Okay.
The lighting could look good. I mean,
lighting.
Yeah, I agree.
It could look really nice because that's a long stretch.
Yeah.
So.
And that's steel on the top, correct?
And then really the same thing here. I guess I could have included this in the initial summary. Not much we can do with the bridge. It is regulated and permitted by WISDOT. Any structural elements that would add any weight to it, including the median, because the median is actually part of the bridge as well, could result in a structural analysis. So we're trying to look at really minimal, aesthetic ways that we could dress this up. Even if we pursued a different railing at this location, it would have to be a certain grade, like WISDOT approved railing because of the river. So the idea here was to probably keep the existing railing painted black so that it's consistent with the rest, and then add that really thin stone veneer because that won't add a lot of weight. Then we did talk here about adding maybe some lighting, which is maybe where Alderman Hancher, got that idea for the other part. And then, yeah, here's a couple images of where we could just light up just that rail edge, or provide some down lighting. Here's the new, just kind of the cleaner look of the bridge at Dunges Bay or the overpass. That doesn't have any additional railing or stone. But then also as part of that gateway bridge, section number 1 is that concrete median. This is where we could maybe do some, structural gateway and entryway features if we're not successful in being able to add anything green there. The existing median at where I'm pointing to number 2 is immediately to the west of that concrete median. That I think we've actually already done some planting in over the last week, and we can replace the very tall light fixture there. You can see there's a 2-armed one just just below the number 2 there. And then on section number 3, in that grassy terrace area, which is in front of Riverside, we can add our, typical streetscaping pattern with street trees and a light fixture in that area. We should be able to dress up section 2 because it's already a grassy median, so that shouldn't be an issue with WISDOT.
Looks good. Is there any feedback? Alderman Parrish?
Thank you. District 6 used to cover the bridge here, so I would get occasional comments that we discussed at Public Works maybe a year and a half ago, just about how to make the bridge safer, and then said, oh, we're going to be doing this a few years later, so this would be one time to talk about other things, and I understand that. I was going to ask, first of all, there are a lot of pedestrians that go on this bridge, and we're hoping more will go there, especially like the high school kids after high school, and they're going to go on the sidewalk. Can you just go back a couple slides? Picture. Yeah, that's good. But you can just kind of see how close the traffic is to the sidewalk. It feels very close. There's just very little we can do with that because of the DOT, but I wanted to just suggest 2 ideas. One was to install 4 accent lighting bollards, one on each end, so that so I guess in this case we'd be looking straight at one, and it's basically not on the bridge but right on the outside of each bridge.
Yep. Okay.
Just kind of, we can't do a fence or anything, but it would kind of have, I feel like it would create some separation. And then we talked about reflectors, which Dale brought up for this area along Main Street. How we would like to do those here, but not on the bridge for a variety of reasons. And then we talked about just different types of paint, like on the curbing, like reflective paint, just some way to differentiate, because when you look at it, there is no green or separation from the sidewalk to the road. So it does painting the curb, create some more separation.
Okay.
Is it true we can't add a fence? I'm sure it's a snow removal nightmare, but.
Yeah, at the time there was discussion of like bollards down that area too. There's not a lot of room on that sidewalk, so any additional encumbrances would be difficult. I mean, you're just narrowing up the space, and I think from a maintenance standpoint of plowing the sidewalk in the winter with those extra elements is going to make it difficult. But I mean, I think we could, dress up each end cap and have that bookend, and I think that would be both a signal that you've arrived somewhere else, but also lend itself to kind of creating, a little bit more special feature to the bridge.
I like the idea of the bollards because at least it's a visual cue for a driver. Hey, there's something there. I should make sure I steer away from it. Alderman Strelchak.
Just wanted to say that everything you've come forward with so far has just been excellent. I like the veneer. I think it's going to dress up the city in multiple places, and I like that you're tying it in 2 different places. One within town center and one as you're getting to it. I support Alderman Parrish's recommendations on the bridge. We do have paint on this subject, and we also have paint on an upcoming one that we're going to talk about in the crosswalk. I do want to caution you that paint gets very slippery in the rain, and it gets very slippery in freezing conditions. So as we're painting things, let's please keep that in mind. The one time, you know, I've been riding motorcycles since I was 12, and I raced off-road, so I really pretty much know kind of what I'm doing. The one time I did go down on a bike was at a crosswalk making a turn in a damp condition. It wasn't raining, it wasn't wet. It was a condition I didn't expect it to be as slippery as the crosswalk was, and it was a painted crosswalk. So as we're trying to create a safer town center, I would highlight that for other people. And especially as you're walking across this bridge, if we do paint the edge, which I do support and agree with, I would just recommend that on the flat surface it doesn't come in as far, because I'd hate to have somebody slip off of that and then actually fall into traffic because of something we tried to put in place to make it more safe.
Okay.
Alderman Meyer.
I think that if we do get the lighting along the railing, at least at nighttime, then I think it would help with designation on the sidewalk for Alderman Parrish's idea to highlight that over there, which I think is correct. I know that way ago we had started this and talked about actually illuminating some of the bridge itself on the outside, not the inside.
From the riverside.
Is there any thought of that continuing on, or?
We did talk about that. That is an option. From what we've kind of learned is that the actual installation of it and maintenance can be very costly because of the type of labor that you have to do to install it. You actually have to you have to be hanging off the bridge. So the crew that you have to get out there is going to, the cost of that installation might make it not cost effective.
Yeah, you have to have people certified for doing high work suspended and be an electrician, so it's specialty work now.
This would be kind of a cool effect.
We'll hang over the edge.
Yeah. I wonder if I wonder if doing something maybe along the river edge would get us a similar effect down in the park area, the riverfront park area, even though it wouldn't be up on the bridge.
Or uplighting from.
Yeah. I can have another round of conversation about that.
Any more feedback on the bridge, or are we ready to move on to the next topic? Feels like we're ready.
Okay, so the Oit Crossing, this has really been the impetus for being able to make some of these other changes, narrowing down the road. This is, I think we all probably know what it looks like, but the OIT kind of helps serve as a mid-block symbol to what I think the neighborhood's unique theme is. So we collectively have worked to go through the variations of the most safe crossing, both with Taddy and Batterman as our consultants. So if you remember, we've chosen that Danish crossing. This should look familiar. We are able to get a flashing light in advance of the crosswalk. Kristen was successful in getting the support of WISTA to do that. We can't have that light right at the crosswalk because of the railroad light. So just as a friendly reminder. So we're going to still be researching how to make that light best work and how it can be programmed. The final design, or the near final design, in this case shows that crosswalk. What it includes is some landscaping on each edge, as well as an accent light on each of those bollards. We wanted to create some kind of barrier to the side, but we didn't like the idea of a complete fence. For some of the reasons Dale mentioned about the cemetery, we think, with people in that crosswalk, even though it's pretty wide, the potential, for someone to fall onto that, it might be a little bit concerning. So we've got some landscaped beds, some bollards to help delineate that space. We have a little bit of like a pavered edge just on each side of the access to the crosswalk. And then we have some options in terms of painting the crosswalk, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then we explored opportunities to provide a secondary, albeit smaller, gateway image to kind of hit that rhythm or that element throughout the neighborhood. So, two options that we looked at was this one and then the reverse of that. We did explore some that were vertical, but we were concerned about the vision both into and out of the crosswalk. And then we looked at some more traditional styles, but they just were too far, removed from the gateway feature at the intersection of Mequon and Cedarburg Road. So really the distinction between these two that you're seeing is just that signage. Of course, if you have any input about the landscaping, we're happy to talk about that too. We've incorporated a lot of what you see in the Civic Campus parking lot, so some grasses that will provide winter interest, and then some variety of color and texture throughout the year. And there will be, obviously, some of the vertical elements that you see there, some of the pedestrian signage as well.
What's the surface of the crosswalk? Is it green?
It's just, it's fine.
Are you proposing it to be green? Or what material is it
there
going
are
to be?
options, like later in the packet, you could do a design. Green would be typical to designate it as a bikeway crossing. Or what the other option that we looked at was the one where you just have the wide, blocked, painted rectangles, which is what we're doing throughout the rest of Town Center. So really the choice would be to do, be consistent with those wide crosswalks or wide white rectangular painted crosswalks, or to do a solid color, or you could do something artistic.
I just wanted to note that the ad hoc policy subcommittee is looking at that same crosswalk concept for crossing Port Washington Road. They discussed it at length. I would think whatever they decide there would probably make sense here. I don't know.
Well, they're starting to trend towards like an asphalt paver system that you can then, like a stamped paver that you can then paint.
So yeah, I like that idea.
Because then you don't get the the as much of the cracking at the edge of the concrete.
So regarding the comment on paint earlier being slippery, and I do agree with that. I once received an unlawful display of power ticket because my tires chirped because they are parked on one of those, and there was a Hales Corners squad right behind me who decided he wanted to give me a ticket for that. That was special. If we did something like the green, though, could we make it out of dyed concrete? Because then you don't have to go back and repaint it, and it wouldn't be as slippery. It might be a better choice, but I do have some concerns about putting that much paint in one spot. And I don't even know if we want the green. Maybe the rest of the committee doesn't like the green, but I think in this one location, it kind of draws your eye to it more as a motorist. And that's half the problem we have is people just aren't paying attention. And I've see it frequently where one person will stop and the next person will go. And it's like real life Frogger out there for people trying to cross. This would set it apart a little better. Alderman Meyer had his hand up first.
I like the green, but as I was reminded from the previous mayor and some common council members that we had the color out in front, and we did that concrete. And one of the things that was supposed to have been done to it, went by the wayside probably because of cost, was supposed to be pressure washed every year to maintain the color because it's solid concrete. It was supposed to be done every year because right now it's got all the black marks and everything from traffic on it. That's going to get even worse because it's more heavily traveled than what it is out in front. So if we did decide to go to this, number one, I would recommend it would be the concrete. Number two is that we do have some kind of annual program that we go out there and we clean the thing. Otherwise, it's just going to get black. That's the nature of the beast. So.
Sure. Good comment. Alderman Strelchuk?
I've got a question and then a couple comments right after. So, with the green, I like the green. I'll start with the comment. I think the green does what we intend for it to do, and it really draws us attention to that crossing as being one that's maybe a little more high trafficked. And it creates a visual barrier where people would naturally slow down. I think the landscaping, the bollards, and everything that you've got on here is just fantastic. My question for you is, follow up on that, is has there been any feedback as to whether or not motorists are confused by the fact that it is in fact a crosswalk being green and that they do need to yield to pedestrians crossing? If that's the case, I would lend more towards the white stripes, even though I like the green visually better and I think it accomplishes a lot. So I guess I'm trying to figure out what feedback is.
We haven't asked that specific question or gotten that feedback from the consultant. I think if you're a driver that is either accustomed to being in areas like this, or or because it's frequent, you better understand its meaning. Or probably if you're a bicyclist, you probably understand that the green is associated with a bikeway path, right? So yeah, I don't know that I can answer that, right? Because it's a little bit of human nature. I mean, I do think collectively, the more that you can do within this area, including the flashing signage, collectively, the more you do, I think the more it's going to stand out. I don't know that I can answer the question about, having it be a different concrete. I think, and we can talk about that. I'm sure there would be a lot of additional logistics and concerns about cutting that section out. I mean, maybe the better approach is to see if there's a different type of texture that can be applied.
Will the DOT let us maintain that on an annual basis without question, or do we have to go through a series of approvals to maintain that? Okay, so we're covered. Bringing up one other small point, just if we do choose to paint it, a highly sanded and a very textured surface is going to be critical here, because as a bicyclist that's going to go cruising through, and if I'm the only one there and I can get through in and out real quick with traffic, I'm going to be kind of in the apex of my turn as soon as I hit that paint. And I'm going to be trying to accelerate across the street for cars that may or may not want to stop. So there is an increased risk of a bicyclist's front tire washing out if we don't really have strong due diligence on making sure that that's a tractable surface.
Okay. We'll bring that issue back to our landscape architect from Smith Group, who happens to also be an avid bicyclist. So I think, there'll be some good ideas that we can explore.
So to facilitate this moving along, what decisions do we need on this slide? I think there's
later in the presentation.
Crosswalk, there's some of the elements for the sign, which I think they're similar to the other signs that are taller on the end caps. Maybe we can, I'm assuming if we like one design for the shorter one, we'll like the same design for the taller one.
Yep, most of them have, some wood elements to them. We've tried to incorporate the wave for those of you who may not remember or weren't here at the time. The city picked sort of like this river station theme, and so we've kind of continued with the wave. You see that in the gateway now. You see it in some of the concrete. Yeah, we can take, there's the other secondary gateway signs. We can take elements of any of those and, put it into the final. But yes, they all have the wood slats that are consistent with what's at the corner.
Can you go back? Can you show the other version of this sign again? Yeah, the other one is better. The first one before you moved it, in my opinion.
We made sure the logo was on the driver lane side, so
but it looks better with it going up. I mean, this is Mequon on the rise, not Mequon on the decline.
There is a little bit of that too, and yeah, I think this comment will apply to the signs on the other end, so we can maybe get two birds from one stone. Do we like this sign better, or the? I agree with Alderwoman Schneider. I like this one a little better.
I think one of the things about this that's helpful is that the concrete part contrasts, right, with the ground, and then it contrasts with the wood slats. Right. And then the wood slats kind of contrast with, just the open space of the rest. Where this one,
Visually
the wood
pops
slats
in.
kind of, there isn't as much contrast with the ground, and then the top of it gets kind of lost because of the cream color of it.
Any strong feelings on that one way or the other?
I like
It's
that
an
one.
opinion, and I want to weigh it out. So,
Okay, which one do we want to call option A and option B for the purposes of a straw poll? So this will be option A, the one with the wood on top. Option B will have the concrete on top. Who likes option A? And option B? Looks like option A sort of went well. Dale's an odd man out, but that's okay. Alderman Strelchek?
just really quick, if we pick whatever option's shown here, whether that's A or B, that logo is really far down on there, and people are going to go through like, what kind of idiot would plan to put a logo in front of, right behind bushes?
Mm-hmm.
So as we're doing the landscaping, we need to keep that in mind. I do like the other version. I think you just shift the logo to the left and still be on the rise, because it creates a bigger visual barrier for motorists as they're coming here, with the white being a little higher. But don't care either way. I just,
Okay. Yeah, we did talk about landscaping at the base. The other thing is that we are going to attempt to get like a halo glow behind the logo as well.
The lighting will be nice. How do people feel about the crosswalk? Seems to be a little bit of momentum behind green, if it can be
green if
the
it's
right
safe.
material or texture.
Yes.
Okay.
And I'll
Looks
just
like everyone's
maybe-
kind of liking the green.
Oops. This was the next, this was after the crossing. So just to show you the comparison of the three. I mean, I don't think we would do the artistic one on the bottom left, but that's just an example. I don't think we would use that pattern or that color, but it's just to show that you can do anything you
There's
want.
infinite options there. I don't think we can handle that.
Yeah.
We need a whole other meeting.
And it would get dated pretty quick, no matter what we chose.
And the triangles would be part of it either way.
No, you could do anything you wanted.
I mean, I do like the triangles. I want to make sure those are included.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant the triangles in the graphic.
No.
Yes, it is. Those are included.
Good.
So consensus is green?
Looks like green, and then I think we had a decision on that.
Texture. You can
Yeah, there's a detail there to pick at, but I think it's an important one. What's next?
Okay. So what's next is the gateways. So this will help you go back to the other one if you want to see anything different. So this is on the corner of Bunch Rock and Mequon Road. So on the southwest corner, in front of Aurora, across from Foxtown Brewery. So here we would do a vertical element, and these are the two that we landed on. The top one has, a curved edge, or this one has a curved edge to the top and the bottom, and it does have a similar stone veneer at the base, and is, obviously has much more concrete. And then this one, same thing. It's got the stone base, does not have the curved edge, and then it's got the wood slats. And again, we would look to do a halo glow here behind the logo.
Was there any concern about too much massing on the street? It's just a very large structure.
Jack and I went out there multiple times. We took a measuring stick to. We have come down in the height of this since it was originally proposed. There is a pretty significant row of trees on that side, and then when you compare that with what we expect to see as the traffic signal there, we've landed at about somewhere between 12 and 13 feet in height for this.
Okay, so it won't be 17.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
17 was a little high.
Is there any preference one way or the other between the two? Which one do we like? The one that's shown here, the wood's
Here's
more prominent?
A and here's B.
Yeah. So do we like the wood more prominent or the concrete more prominent? So wood first. Looks like the wood is in the lead concrete. You would like the concrete, and we got one for the concrete. They're very similar.
We can't do the curve on the top of this with the wood slats. So that's why this one has that sharper top.
Oh, that's interesting. I got a jigsaw. We can cut curves.
Okay, so I saw like a 5 to 1.5. So looks like this one was the selected one.
Where else does this show up in town center?
This won't be anywhere else.
So we're not putting anything down by outposts?
No.
Can we?
I guess there's some debate of adding some sort of feature just before you hit Cedarburg Road, but we don't know what we can really do yet, correct?
Right, so there would be one as you're approaching Cedarburg Road, you're westbound into that intersection. There would be one at that median by the bridge.
One similar to this?
Yes.
Okay, so one at each end. Really, as you hit the heart of it.
Outpost has a wall with their pavilion out at the corner. We had secured an easement on that wall if we ever wanted to put some signage for town center or welcome or something like that, so we could explore that.
I like tying something in there.
At that corner, okay. Okay, so option A, this one is the choice, and duplicate that by bridge.
Okay, what's next? Keep her moving.
Okay, this is just a close-up of the other two signs. This is the example of the secondary one. So this one wouldn't be at the bridge because you like the other one better. We were talking about doing a very smaller scaled one at the public safety building, really as you're exiting town center. Because as you're leaving the Mequon Cedarburg Road intersection, you'll see the one on the river. So this is one to kind of end cap as you exit the neighborhood.
So where is that again?
This would be at the Mequon Buntrock intersection on the corner where the public safety building is.
On the Buntrock corner?
Yeah, in the Buntrock Mequon Road corner. Okay. This is just to let you know that this is what our traffic signals will look like. We have the choice of silver or black. We're choosing black. We don't have much other choice. We will explore what kind of arm and light fixture that we can put on the top of this, and we do not have those options yet from the consultant. This is just to show you what the infrastructure looks like at the existing intersections. Mequon, Cedarburg Road, as part of the workshop last year, we deferred making any improvements other than enhancing the crosswalks at this intersection until the resurfacing project is done by WISDOT. We'll have the opportunity to upgrade these traffic signals at that time to match the rest of the neighborhood. So we've always talked about adding brackets and banners to our new street lights. Cedarburg Road is an obvious location to do that, but I also think mid-block or along the 2 blocks between Cedarburg Road and Buntrock is another good opportunity to do something like this. And this just shows an example of how it really helps, create the consistent theme in the look and makes it distinct from something else. And with everything else going on, I mean, a little bit of added color at that higher level might be really attractive.
I think it's totally necessary because you go through any downtown and any small-ish Wisconsin town, every single one of them has stuff like this. This will really make it pop. We're just building our downtown, 50, 60 years after the fact. It's just
right.
But we can still make it look like that.
Perfect.
Is there a consensus for these? Yeah. That's
okay. Good addition.
Go for it.
I think we're almost there. We did want to do something distinct with the street signage. So these will be up on the traffic signals as well as at the corners. The color choices we have, other than the green, is white with black, brown with white. There is a third option of a blue background with white, but it didn't really seem, in our opinion, to match the rest of the color and kind of the more, earth, natural, colors and materials that we're using.
You don't want to get it confused with our blue signs.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally like the brown with the white lettering, but
I second that.
Well, I think
how does everyone else feel?
I think it would be consistent with having the wood look.
That is true. That's a good point. Does anyone like the reverse of that, the white with the brown lettering?
I like white with black.
Our neighboring
We need to have a
community.
straw poll on that.
No.
Brown sign with white lettering. Okay, we're all We're
All
there.
good on
Okay.
that? Okay. I did just want to note that our neighboring community, Brown Deer, does use the brown with the white as well, just in case that would, if that feels too close to you or close to us, if that changes anyone's opinion.
They kind of have that same look down in their little old downtown.
Little old village.
Yeah. It looks good. It's far enough away.
I wasn't really, planning to, do a ton of wayfinding signage, but if our sign package allows for it, I think there are some, locations within the town center and the civic campus, including the village of Thiensville. That type of signage is already out on the street, so I think it would make sense to put that back in, but do it in a way that matches the rest of the signage. So just wanted to get everybody's read on that. And then the last thing would be really the Trailhead Facility. So this is the location of our current Trailhead Facility, and it's got a lot of random fixtures as part of it. We did defer this at our workshop until the Civic Campus Master Plan is contemplated. There are going to be improvements to our driveway. The driveway from the former Logaman Center to Mequon Road is being shifted over. We're going to have the designated OIT. We're going to cross our driveway much sooner than where we've got our new sidewalks and our new parking lot. So the consultant did go through this exercise of a trailhead concept. We don't have to make decisions about this right now. I just wanted to get this in front of people and get people to start thinking about this in advance of the civic campus. I don't think we're going to have the kind of excess dollars in the budget of this project to tackle this right now. If for some reason we did and it became something that we thought we should address, we'll definitely bring it back to you. If there aren't any other questions, just thanks for working through those, and I'm happy that you guys know what to expect next year at this time. Hopefully, what will be out in the street.
Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. Director Tolleson, you've done a great job with this presentation. We all appreciate it. I think the community is excited as well. Would you mind blowing up the sign? I had it off before the meeting. I brought this up with Kim, and when you see MT, I'm not sure what you think, but a lot of people driving through will think Mequon Thiensville, and I believe our intention perhaps is to be saying Mequon Town Center, and I just wanted to suggest that we consider like an MTC or something all new altogether that doesn't have any confusion whatsoever about whose downtown this is, unless there's like reciprocal signage going both ways, which I don't think there is. So I know we approved this on the corner and we have to stay consistent, and I wasn't part of that conversation, but now this is the rest of our town center. This is Mequon's town center, and it's not very clear to me. So
I think if we go back to the original concept for town center, it was a Mequon Thiensville town center where Mequon would just blend into Thiensville, and for some practical purpose it becomes one.
Yes. There's a couple things that happened. I mean, Thiensville had dollars to spend and made decisions about design features before Mequon was ready to do so. So they went ahead and implemented some things. So that in and of itself created some inconsistencies. There was an agreed upon logo, which was kind of the tower, fire station tower element. The Village of Thiensville adopted that as their whole village logo. So it really then became not something to use as part of town center. There was a point in time where we did look to hire a consultant to do a brand. At the end of the day, the council chose not to do that. I mean, we went through the RFP process and budgeted dollars for it, and at the time of the final selection, the council just chose not to do that. From my perspective, I think once the logo went up at the corner gateway, I think it kind of solidified what the logo should be for the area. We did do something subtle with the logo. We did, at the corner, the wave on the top is not separated. In all of these gateway features, we separated it so that it was a subtle indication that we've got the M, the T, and the C over the corner. So that's very subtle. I recognize that, but we did try to make a little bit of a distinction.
I think coming up with a completely different logo now is really tough. I'm not sure how big that diameter of that thing is on the corner. It's about 8 feet in diameter. It's there. It's here to stay. It's sort of the identity now.
That's why I said MTC. I don't think it'd be too much of a change.
You put the little copyright logo in the corner. MT with a little C.
That's my point.
Alderman
Is it the
Strelchak.
placement of the C?
And
I didn't even see the C initially, so now that
Yeah.
I'm seeing it, I like it. It's just on the wrong side.
Yeah.
I think that it's
No
in
sense.
there and that you've identified that it's that. I think that fits. You know, logos and branding, I mean, like, you don't always tie in, you don't spell everything out sequentially. It's just kind of an image and a feel that you look at. It's just kind of a quick thing. If you wanted to spell it out, you put all the letters up there. I was excited to hear that you added the division there because I was like, it looks a little different. The M looks a little bigger, which I'm
A little
pleased.
longer.
Which I'm pleased to see. You know, because tying with what Alderman Parrish did say, this is kind of the Mequon Thiensville Town Center, but it's in Mequon, and this branding is coming strictly out of Mequon's budget. So, we owe it to our community to brand for our community. Tying in with the brown here, I did look up brown signs, so I'm switching my vote from black and white to brown on the last one. Brown signs are identified with tourist facilities, and those meant to alert drivers to the presence of tourist attractions, such as, and it lists off a list of different things. So I think it really ties in, real well here. I spent 20 years in branding and marketing. I feel that what you've come up with here, although it wasn't a consensus logo from the beginning, I think reinventing that wheel once you do have that giant, Mequon Thiensville logo on the corner that we put in, I think it would look and feel out of place, and we'd have too much going on. And I think it's a good, solid look. It ties in with the wave. It ties in with the fact that we're a riverfront community and we share that with Thiensville. I think this is a win all the way around.
all right. I think that brings us through everything we needed to decide.
Thank you.
Item 4 is future policy items for discussion, consideration, anything real quick, or as always, feel free to email Will or I. We can get it on the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. We only went over 7 minutes. Not bad. To not drag this out, let's promptly start the Common Council meeting for October 11th. Please call the roll. Oh, it says call to order. Oh, you're right. Okay. Pledge allegiance first, then roll call. Okay. Join me in the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now the roll call, please.
Alderman Strelchak.
Here.
Alderman Bushy is absent. Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Hancher.
Here.
Alderman Garrell.
Here.
Alderman Parrish.
Here.
Alderman Schneider.
Here.
And Mayor Nervin.
Here. First up, public hearings. There are none. Next item is personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public officials' reports. I don't have anything, but I know Administrator Jones has an item or two to speak about.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we are joined by several representatives from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, including a number of members of their consulting team from both HNTB as well as Kapoor and Associates. Joining us tonight will be Ken Kapshinski from WisDOT, as well as Tony Keegan from HNTB. They will be giving us a short presentation, and I'm hoping our projector bulb will hold out here as we've worked our way through a number of PowerPoint slides tonight on the progress that's been made so far on the I-43 expansion project. We're roughly a year into the project, and there are 3 more years to go. So staff thought it would be appropriate for the representatives to be here tonight to give a short status update on where we are with the project and what we can expect over the next 3 to 9 to 12 months. So I'm going to invite Ken and Tony to come up to one of the tables. Justin will get the PowerPoint slides fired up. And again, I'm hoping that projector bulb gives us another 10 or so minutes. Ken and Tony, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Ken Kapshinski. I'm the project manager for one of the projects and another project that will be starting up later this year in the I-43 corridor. Sitting beside me is Tony Keegan with H&TB. And yeah, we're just going to give you a short 10-minute blip on where we're at on I-43. So on this slide here gives you a good overview of the program. Our I-43 program, as you may or may not know, extends all the way from Highway 60 all the way down to Bender Road in Milwaukee County. The whole purpose of this program is to modernize and expand the freeway from 2 lanes to 3 lanes through this entire corridor. As you mentioned, we're a year in where we already accomplished a work zone prep project that set the stage for our 2 current projects that are going on the north end segment and the county line segment. And as you can kind of see here, we have our segments kind of highlighted. We're kind of doing an approach where we kind of skip and jump through interchanges within this whole corridor. So this year, our focus is for the north end segment is on the Highland Avenue area, and then down County Line Road is on the Port Washington Road interchange area. As you can see, there's also other segments that are going to be starting here soon. The south end segment actually just got let today, and we find out who our constructor is more than likely tomorrow. And then later in next year, looking at a July lane, but could be advanced a little bit earlier, is the Mequon Road segment. And you can move to the next slide, Tony. So let's start with the north end. This is the northernmost project. The limits go from Highway 60 to Highland Avenue. We'll just run through a few of the impacts that the communities and adjacent communities have been seeing this year. Falls Road, number 1 on that list there. The bridge over Falls Road was torn down and reconstructed. We do have some adjacent roadway now that we're going to be rebuilding on that road. We're expecting completion of that bridge over Falls Road. I'm sorry, the bridge over I-43 for Falls Road to be completed later this year, later in the fall. The next point on this slide is Lakefield Road. Currently, Lakefield Road is closed underneath I-43. Purpose of that is we are expanding temporarily the width of Lakefield Road northbound to accommodate future traffic staging on I-43. Completion of that bridge expansion, again, it's just a widening to the east for northbound lanes, will be completed later this fall as well. The big one, probably most people are talking about in the community, is the construction of the new interchange at Highland Road. Last Saturday, we successfully opened the bridge at Highland Road, making that connection from Fort Washington to Concordia University. We are expecting, hopefully as early as later next month, to reopen all the ramps in that interchange as well. So again, it'll be a good addition to the community there and hopefully a good spike in business. So again, that Highland Road interchange completion is kind of the highlight for this year. Mainline construction, you might see, in that entire stretch, there's some reconstruction and some earthwork that is building the new future lanes of I-43 in the median. Be doing some concrete paving for the future left shoulder and lane 1 this year, but the majority of the mainline work will be next year. Looking forward to next year, the main focus will be southbound, northbound mainline freeway reconstruction. So a lot of concrete paving on I-43 itself will be done. And then since we got the Highland Road interchange done this year, that allows us to move and not cause too much disruption in this north end segment, we'll go ahead and move and reconstruct the County Highway C bridge and ramps next year as well. Once that is kind of complete, we'll move on, and there's some ramps that need some reconfiguring and realigning at the Wisconsin 60 interchange just for the northbound exit and southbound entrance. Now the project that I manage, County Line and Port Washington Road interchange, currently what you're kind of seeing here is the kind of the fresh new update to that that interchange. Formerly that was a southbound on and a northbound exit interchange, where the southbound on ramp went onto the freeway from County Line Road, and then Port Washington, you had the old northbound Port Washington exit. You can see the new geometry change here. Now there will be still that existing ramp at the southbound County Line Road location. However, everything else moves up to the Port Washington Road area, where the northbound exit, southbound exit, and northbound entrance will all kind of reside. And that's kind of the focus of our work this year, is getting that Port Washington bridge done. So again, the kind of the impacts that we got done this year, Donjas Bay closed earlier in the year, reconstructed, and got that bridge reopened late in August. So everything looks good there. New urban section with concrete curb and gutter on that bridge. The bridge is slightly a little bit wider, and everything went in real well there. The other bridge we knocked down was Port Washington. So that's closed between essentially County Line Road and Zeidler, utilizing Port Washington Lane as our current detour route. I know that's been kind of a trying thing for the community, but again, that bridge is scheduled to be completed by the end of this year. And along with our recent closure, due to us completing Donjas Bay, we had Catherine Road closed between Zeidler Lane and the Port Washington Bridge to accommodate a rather large box culvert, which we set our last sections this week for that box culvert. We're currently burying it and transitioning the old box culvert into the new one this week. So good progress happening there. And then the last two items 6 and 7 at the bottom there, are the ramps we did close last year, the old ramps, the southbound on-ramp for County Line Road. Obviously you cannot open due to the configuration of where we're at with freeway construction on the main line. And then the old retired northbound exit ramp to Port Washington Road is going away, and there will be a pond, detention pond, at that location. Oh yeah, and then the Catherine Road closures, thanks Tony. Catherine Road closure, we're looking to reopen later this fall as well. So just got some grading and some concrete work, and again, we're packing in a lot of dirt work in there from rebuilding that box culvert that went through. Looking into next year, the vast majority of the work on County Line Road and Port Washington Road is this year. So once Port Washington is complete, we've completed Donjas Road. We have one more bridge to complete, and that's the County Line Road Bridge. I didn't mention on the previous slide, but we did complete a vast, about roughly 2/3 of our mainline reconstruction this year, with the exception of the kind of a section of 1,200 feet underneath the County Line Road, and we kind of had the zigzag traffic around there to accommodate the staging. But County Line Road hopefully will be knocked down this winter. Closure over the freeway only. All the adjacent roads, frontage roads, will be reopened. Port Washington being rebuilt this year will be fully done and able to scoot through that intersection at County Line Road. And we'll be completing all the main line and the ramps by the middle of next year.
All right, I'm going to take over on this slide. So as Ken mentioned earlier, the Mequon Road interchange is expected to be let. At this point, it's looking like a July let, which would mean about Labor Day. They would probably start construction in that area. So essentially, the biggest impact that you would probably see here would be some lane closures on Mequon Road under the freeway, because they're going to be doing a temporary bridge widening there, and then southbound lane closures overnight in order to do some widening of the roadway there. Essentially, one of the first big stages there is to rebuild northbound freeway and the northbound ramps, and that's expected to happen, early the year after that. So the impacts to Mequon Road next year should not be too great, except unless it is accelerated, and that is a potential, but it's a small potential. So looking forward to 2023 for the Mequon Road segment and the South End segment. As I just mentioned, Mequon Road should be fairly minor. The South End segment I know is south of your project or your jurisdiction, but I thought it would be helpful for you to note that there's going to be a lot of work at the Brown Deer Road interchange, and I know there's probably a lot of your constituents that live in that area and would be using Brown Deer Road, especially with county line closed. So there is going to be a bridge widening there, but the bridge is going to remain open to 2 lanes the entire time, unless there's overnight lane closures. There will be ramp closures and there will be long-term ramp closures, but those would be advertised ahead of time. The same way you've been getting the notifications now, you'll be getting the notifications for those, at least a week ahead of time, if not more, just as a heads up. One quick slide I just wanted to quickly include was how WSDOT spends a lot of, we have a really big, robust TMP plan. It's a federally required part of every single major project that the state does, and the whole goal of this plan is to maintain safety and mobility around the work zone. And this includes a traffic operations plan, traffic incident management, and public information. A lot of you are probably already aware of our public information plan. You see all of our newsletters. We have a website. You're getting a lot of that information. But we do a lot of the behind the scenes work as well with traffic operations, coordinating with all the different DPWs, signals, things like that. Incident management, where we're coordinating with all the emergency responders, making sure that, that they have all the information they need and they can respond quickly. And really, that's it. And I guess if you had any questions, here's our contact information, Ken and myself. And I know that there's 2 of us with the name Keegan on there, but both of us are part of the TMP team, and so you could call either one of us.
Any questions from the council? Thank you for the update. It's a gigantic project. It's really coming along pretty well so far. It hasn't been as disruptive as I envisioned. I'm super glad that Donges Bay is open again because I live on the other side of it. And even that hasn't been too bad, but keep up the good work, and we appreciate the update.
Yeah, we appreciate working with the city of Mequon so far. Kristen Lundine's been really great to work with so far, and we appreciate the collaboration, making this project successful. So it's been good so far. We're 1 year in, we got more to go. So
it's pretty much on track, which is what's what people want to hear. So
thank you.
Ken and Tony, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
All right, next we have the consent agenda. We have 11 sets of minutes from various boards and commissions and 2 resolutions. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda and talk about it individually? Or is there a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. We have 2 ordinance first readings. These will be not be acted upon tonight, unless there's a suspension of the rules, which I don't anticipate. First is Ordinance 2022-1629, an ordinance amending Chapter 58 of the Macaw Municipal Code, establishing veterinarian clinics as a conditional use in the B1 Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District. This was recommended by Planning Commission on September 19th, and this is a first reading. I think it was recommended Planning Commission in 2022, not 2020. So let the record show that. Next is Ordinance 2022-1630, an ordinance amending Section 2-216 Prin 10 of the Mequon Municipal Code, increasing the annual carryover limit of paid time off amongst non-represented employees from 40 hours to 80 hours. This was recommended earlier this evening by the Finance and Personnel Committee, and this is a first reading. Next up is ordinances. There are no ordinances to take action on tonight, which brings us to resolutions. Resolution 3984, resolution approving a town center business loan in the amount of $25,000 between Bank 59 and Mammoth Fitness for a fitness center located at 6400 West Mequon Road. This was recommended by the Economic Development Board on September 20th. The recommendation from Finance and Personnel earlier this evening was to approve this or recommend to the council. Are there any comments or questions, or is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That resolution passes. We welcome Mammoth Fitness and wish them the best of luck. Next up is Resolution 3985, resolution disallowing the claim of Kaizhong Yang dated September 16th, 2022. The recommendation from Finance Personnel Committee this evening was to deny the claim.
Move to deny.
Second.
Motion and the second. Any further comments or questions? If not, all those in favor of denial, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that resolution also passes. We have no specified unfinished business, no specified new business. We have two potential closed session items. The first potential claim against the Mequon Police Department. Common Council may convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 Prin 1 Prin E for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as deemed appropriate. Is there a motion to go into closed session for this item?
Move to go into closed session.
Second. Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
and Mayor Nurbin.
Aye. That closed session item is approved to go into closed session. The next is an item for acquiring a stormwater drainage easement across the property at 9731 North Cortland Drive, or compensation for landscaping with existing drainage easement at 9703 and or 9641 North Cortland Drive. The Common Council may convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85 Prin 1 Prin E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then may reconvene into open session to take such action as deemed appropriate. Is there a motion to go into closed session for this item?
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish, Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Aye.
and Mayor Nurbin.
Aye, and there is somewhat of a chance we will come back and announce our decision on that last item. So we may return. So we'll adjourn out here instead of adjourning in closed session, just in case. All right. 5-minute break before we go into closed session. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Did I turn the mic off? The mic's off for it?
There, we're all here.
Hurry up. All right.
It's fine.
Okay, seeing as we've all returned from closed section, I have an announcement to make about agenda item 12B. We just want to announce that staff is authorized to act as discussed in closed session regarding the stormwater drainage easement, and action will be forthcoming by staff. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.